when I got my first head coaching job, I walked in like the freshly graduated college volleyball player that I was, thinking, I got this. I've been playing the game for a long time. I know the drills, I know the strategies. I have got my color coordinated binders. Well, the reality hit me in the face. And that season, we won one game. There were a lot of mistakes that I made in those first few years as a head coach. And now looking back, 14 years later, I wish I could go back to that first year head coach and tell her a few things. The good news is that I learned those lessons and now I get to share them with you in today's episode. So, whether you are a new coach taking over a program, I've got some advice for you, or you're a seasoned coach and you just want to know what are the things that most coaches struggle with. I'm going to be sharing with you the top 3 mistakes that I made as a coach so that hopefully you can avoid it too. These are things around culture, around communication with athletes, around developing a winning program without sacrificing yourself. So let's get into it. If I have not met you, I'm Coach Bre. I am a mental performance coach for athletes, but also a longtime head volleyball coach, four-time state champ coach. Didn't start that way though. And I work with coaches on how to develop mental strength, culture, and leadership in their programs. So today's episode all about the 3 mistakes that I made as a head coach and how you can avoid them. Before I get into what those 3 things are, I also want to give a shout out to a coach in our community. So this is a coach who's using our plug and play elite mental game for teams program. This is our signature mental training program for coaches to implement mental training in their programs very seamlessly. It's literally plug and play. So this coach she's actually a volleyball coach, so small world, but she was using it with her team this past fall. And she sent me this email. She said, our team took a 3rd place at state. Our players leaned into the mental training all season, visualizing, using their reset routines, and building a real foundation of confidence and resilience. We were confident that continuing this year after year will build such a strong foundation, not just in volleyball, but in life. So, congratulations, coach, on your 3rd place finish at state. That is truly incredible. But more than that, just developing these skills that are going to build upon each other year after year as your team does the program and as they learn these mental training skills. Now, if you're a coach who is interested in learning how to do a plug and play mental training program with your team, head to our free training. It's at coachfreetraining.com. I break down exactly how you can do this in your team in as little as 30 minutes or less a week. All right, let's get into it. Now, my head coaching journey started when I was 22 years old. That's when I took over a program for the first time. Now, 22 years old is pretty young when you consider it, but I was a teacher. I had just graduated college. I had an athletic director that saw a lot of potential in me and took a risk on me and hired me. And I took over a little bit of a struggling program, but it was still great. Like I thought it was a great opportunity to kind of get in and get working and kind of see how it would work as a head coach. And the thing is, I had never been an assistant coach. I just jumped in and automatically took over a program. I didn't think that there was going to be any issue with that. And there really wasn't, but I just did not have like a roadmap. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest. Like I said, I wish I could go back. I wish I could recoach those girls. We won one game that season. And it wasn't necessarily because we weren't, teaching the volleyball skills. But if I were to look back, there were a lot of things that I was missing in terms of structure, in terms of leadership development, in terms of culture development. I'm going to break down kind of the mistakes in a second here. But the other thing about it is that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so part of this is you got to go through it as a coach. So there are some things, but there are also some major things that you can be avoiding when it comes to coaching for the first time, taking over a program for the first time, or even if you have been in a program for a while. Now, I actually ended up coaching there for 3 years before moving to the high school where I am now. So I took over a program. It's back in my hometown. My husband and I both got jobs as teachers and as coaches. My husband coached football in this school district and at this particular school. The thing about this school, though, is that they were in the state championship the year before. So I was taking over a program that was a lot more established. They had a track record of success. I was coming into, seniors that had been there for several years. And if any of you have taken over a program with a strong senior group, it can be good, but also pretty challenging because they kind of have their things and set in their ways. And so that is also, I consider part of like my beginning coaching, right? I had like kind of the stint at the struggling program and what I learned there. And then this program that I took over that was historically pretty successful. And as I took over both of these programs, the first thing that stands out to me, mistake number one that I was doing kind of in both situations was this: coaching to prove myself instead of coaching to build. So coaching to prove myself instead of coaching to build. I'll be honest, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. There's a lot of ego in coaching. There's so many coaches, and I can fall into this trap too, where you kind of tie your feelings about yourself to the success of your team or lack thereof. So in the teams that I've coached, and I've coached, seasons where we won one game, and I've also coached seasons where we won state 4 years in a row. So I've kind of seen both ends of it. And it can be, if you're not self-aware, it can be tough to not tie how you feel about yourself to your team's performance. I mean, not really what keeps you up at night. But a lot of times, at the beginning, when you're a new coach and you're taking over something, you feel like you're under a microscope, or at least I did, right? I was young, was taking over a successful team. I put a lot of pressure on myself to prove myself and kind of prove that I deserve to be there. And that isn't inherently bad. But how it manifests itself for me was that I was just controlling everything. I was making every single decision. So I was taking a lot of power out of my assistant coach's hands and also my team leaders. Every practice plan, every drill, like even the things that don't even matter, like the transportation stuff, the team bonding, well, all that matters. But like, I felt like I had to have my hands in everything. And when I look back, that was just me trying to gain control and really my ego around it, that I have to have my name tied to it so that if it's successful, it's tied back to me. Okay. And that took a lot of reflecting for me as a coach to realize that this is what was going on. It wasn't that, oh, I can do it all. It's like at some point, doing it all is actually a disservice to your players because now they feel like they have no voice. To your assistant coaches who are also feeling like they're a little bit like, what am I here for? To yourself, you're spreading yourself too thin. Like me doing everything was not allowing me to focus in and lean in on what I was really good at, which was like coaching the sport and doing some of this mindset and mental training in the team. Like I was just burning out. And so I wasn't developing leaders. I was really only doing this to kind of prove myself. And I thought this was the way to do it. I also was overcoaching, right? I felt like the more that I coached, the more that I talked, the more that I shared with my team, the more that they thought I would be like an expert. When in reality, I was stealing reps from them. I was stealing time from their practice for me just talking. I was overwhelming players by giving them like too much information. When they get into a game and then I'm just like trying to spew everything at them, like it's no wonder that they were having a hard time with that. So overcoaching, overcorrecting, trying to control every drill, not trusting my assistants or empowering them. Also, like overcoaching the starters and focusing more on the starters than anybody else, which is tough. When I look back, when I say it's tough, I mean I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back and build this culture where everyone feels valued, because I can only imagine, when I'm focusing a lot of my coaching, a lot of my effort on the people who I think are making the biggest difference when really it's the whole team. And I wasn't developing some of these other role players as much as the starting positions because I was so concerned with winning, with proving myself to make sure that we were going to win. And so it was kind of this coaching with fear of judgment. So that would be my number one mistake, really, is coaching to prove instead of coaching to build leaders in my assistants, in my players, in other people who were involved in this whole process. And also not delegating, like not trusting and setting up a system where my parents can get involved, the parents of the athletes, because they're a huge asset. And that actually, one of the other mistakes is that I kind of feared parents. I didn't want to have like any communication with them because in my eyes, it was like, parents cause problems and they cause drama. So it's better just to kind of keep the distance. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But instead, if I were to go back and do this, and this is what I have done since then, it's made a huge difference. Anchoring your program in values, right? So knowing what your program stands for. And I'm sure if you've been around any of this culture development space at all as a coach, you hear about developing core covenants and developing core values of your team, but also including your team leaders in that. So I started doing a leadership core, where I had some leaders of the program, some identified leaders who were responsible for working with me to help develop what our core values of our program are. And like, what does this look like? What does it look like in practice? What does it look like in games? So I'm giving voice and giving autonomy to my players. Also, this shared leadership, right? Like giving responsibilities to my assistant coaches that are actually meaningful things that they can do. Like, can they, aside from just statting games, like how can they actually be in charge of a certain aspect of our program. So putting some leaders in charge of some of the youth development camps, or having my captains run a certain part of it, like giving my captains the warm up a couple of days a week. So giving them some autonomy. Be honest with your team, like being honest with them around where you're at as a coach and what your goals are for the team and what the shared goals should be. Like all of these conversations that I didn't really have, I just told. I just told like this is what we're doing, this is how it's going to happen. They didn't have any voice in any of it. So I think that I although it's kind of a bigger thing, it kind of manifests itself and into me just being overly controlling. It's kind of what I would boil down to, and allowing myself to step back and not give, too much coaching, right? Ask more questions than coaching, right? The answers are within my athletes, empowering them to know what the solutions are. There's a lot to that, but the biggest piece of this was just feeling like I was in control of everything, and that is a quick path to burnout and also a quick path to taking any sort of voice and leadership away from the important people in your program. Okay, that's number one. Mistake number two, skipping any sort of training around the mental and emotional side of the game. Now, if you're like me as a coach, when you first get into it, you're not like really thinking about or even taught like, well, how do I coach my players' mindset or culture or leadership? Like you aren't as coaches, we are not given resources around them. That's why that's why our company exists, is because we're empowering coaches with this information. But I didn't really think it was my job. However, I was seeing the problems associated with not coaching it. So for 2 seasons in a row, after I took over this program that was in the state championship the year before, they were runners up at state. So I took over, like there were high hopes for this program. I had talented teams. 2 seasons in a row with these like talented teams and talented players. We had a real shot at states. Like we were kind of expected to do it. People had us penciled in, all of that. We had the skill, we had the strategy, we had the talent, but when the pressure hit, it was a different story. We for 2 years in a row were in this winner to state, loser out situation, this game where we lost the same fashion too. We won and this is volleyball by the way. So we won the first 2 sets. You had to win best 3 out of 5. We won the first 2 sets. We only had to win one more in order to punch our ticket to state, but we lost that. Okay. Now we lost the 4th set, and then we lost the 5th set in this like, within 2 points, 13 to 15. So that's called a reverse sweep, meaning like we were so close to it and then we got swept by the other team. So they came back to win it. And when that happens 2 years in a row, you really have to look at yourself and a coach and as a coach and realize like, maybe there's something to this training beyond the skill thing, right? Because they had all the pieces. Like we were talented and we were training really well. Like, I'll give it to myself. Like, yeah, practice planning is one of my strengths and I knew the game and all of that. But even so, it didn't matter when they were in the moments where the pressure was on, where they had to pull through, they had to win, they had to get back from their mistakes, and we couldn't. We were, falling under the pressure. And so I really, again, had to look at myself as a coach. And that's actually what kickstarted my journey into becoming a mental performance coach, was like, what resources exist for coaches where we can train this side of the game? I don't have a lot of time. Okay. I don't. I was passionate about it, but I'm like, what can I do? And that's what led me down the journey of becoming a mental performance coach, is about 7 years ago now. And then creating a program for athletes and creating a program for teams. And that's essentially what our plug and play elite mental game for teams is now. It's a really simple way for coaches to plug and play mental training for their team. So I started teaching these skills to my athletes. And the mistake I made at the meeting was like, I just told them like, you got to be mentally tougher. I told them like, you gotta be able to shake off mistakes. And these aren't necessarily bad things to say, but it wasn't teaching them anything. Like me telling them you have to be mentally tough, or me telling them to shake it off, me telling them mistakes are okay. And even like in my gym, we normalize mistakes. A lot of coaches say that. We say like it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make aggressive errors. I'm saying all the right things, but I wasn't actually teaching them skills on like how to get over mistakes, what to say to yourself when you are dealing with pressure, how to turn nerves into something like a feeling of excitement so that they're actually working for you. So I would have incorporated mental training a lot earlier if I would have known that there are simple skills in order to make that happen. So the simplest things that I love to teach my athletes in our gym is a reset routine. So we call ours a snapback routine. So every athlete has their custom snapback routine. It's a combination of a breath, a reset word, and a reset signal so that they can get over mistakes fast. And I don't have to be the coach on the sideline being like, shake it off. Because honestly, like there's not a lot you can do when they're in that moment and they're struggling. Like now you're just kind of like trying to throw them a life preserver. So giving them a skill ahead of time is actually super. I mean, it's what you should do. It's like it's going to help you as a coach because makes things easier for you. It's going to help your players because now they have a skill out there and they're not relying on you. You've got so much to do as a coach on the sideline and so much that you should be coaching beyond like the emotional side of the game. So giving them that skill. So that's a skill that I think every athlete should have. Every coach should be teaching that to their players. And if you want to learn how to teach it to your athletes, head to our free coach training. This is where we break it down. We break down this method along with other like simple mental training tools that you can be doing with your team. So that's at coachfreetraining.com. A couple other things that we do that you'll learn at that training are daily mindset routine. It's called 3-2-1 Brave. A really simple way to start practice. It takes like 5 to 7 minutes. So they do this routine, the 3-2-1 stands for 3 affirmations, 2 minutes of journaling, one thing you're grateful for, one piece of evidence that one of their affirmations is coming true. And then we do a short visualization called Brave. So I break down all of that at our free coach training. But that, like just starting our practice that way, focusing on our mindset has been a game changer because now our practices are a lot more focused. We're not wasting time, like kind of trying to get their heads into practice because of like the day that they just had. So like those simple things and teaching those things to athletes because they're going to be in pressure situations. Like it's a given, like it's gonna happen. So either you're going to be scrambling to try and like be reactive in those situations, or you can be proactive, give them the skills, train it in practice, and then when they get into a game, then they're ready, then they're prepared. We also do a lot of visualization, and that doesn't actually have to take a lot of time either. In our program, we actually just give you visualizations and plug and play so that you can play them for your athletes or they can download them to their phone so they can listen to them so that you don't have to be the one trying to like also like read them a visualization if that's not your jam. But little like simple things like that make a big difference in how athletes show up. And me not prioritizing this in the beginning, like it showed. It definitely shows. And it shows in the moments where it matters most. Like mental training is not going to make up for a lack of physical training. So like in my, the first program that I took over that was struggling. We only won one game that first season. By the way, by the time I was only there for 3 years, but after my third year, we had made postseason for the first time, like in, I think it was like 20 years or something like that. So it was like a good, wasn't like I was doing everything wrong, but if you have a team that really needs to focus on the fundamentals, like obviously doing mental training isn't going to replace that. But when your team is training well and they're putting in the physical reps, mental training is what gives them a competitive advantage. It also allows them to learn faster, right? Because now they're not like battling their own negative thoughts in their mind, and you're not trying to convince them that they are good enough and like wasting a lot of emotional energy there. They're also going to take coaching better from you. So a lot of times athletes become a little in their heads when they get coached and they get coached tough from athletes. So or from coaches. Like if you're a coach that does have high standards and you do hold your athletes accountable, I'm not saying like scream and run them type approach, but like, yeah, you are tough and you are demanding and you're expecting things from your athletes. And if you're finding that being that style of coach is causing your athletes to shut down, giving them mental training skills is going to help them not shut down when you are coaching them. So you can actually coach them tougher in those situations. So a note on that. It actually saves you time. It makes your job a little bit easier. So that's mistake number 2. So mistake number 1 is coaching to prove, kind of just this overemphasis on winning, overemphasis on like over coaching, doing everything myself so that people could see me and be like, oh, Bre, look at her, and honestly, that's like vulnerable for me to say, but I think that if you're honest with yourself, most coaches are in that boat. Like we feel like we're under my microscope and we've got to prove ourselves. But mistake number 2, not prioritizing the mental or emotional part of the game earlier. And if you want to learn more about how you can do this with really simple skills, go to our coach training at coachfreetraining.com. Okay, mistake number 3, I already kind of alluded at this, but poor and inconsistent communication. I never forget, like in my first like 3 or 4 years of coaching, I got like more parent emails than I have in my last 7 years combined. And it's intentional. Like the things that I put in place, I really do think made a difference in some of that. And when I say parent emails, like just this, my daughter's devastated because she's not playing and she had no idea why she's not starting. And I'm like reading this email and I'm like, it's clear as day to me, why you're not starting. And, but clearly there was a miscommunication from me to the athlete, from the athlete to her parent. And I really hadn't communicated well. I made assumptions. I left things unsaid. I thought she understood. That silence creates confusion, which turns into drama. I also, like I said at the beginning, kind of thought parents were to be kept at arm's length. And so I even, in this, I can't believe I used to do this. I used to say that our practices were closed. It's like, we have closed practice. You can't come in. And I thought my justification was that for that was like, we don't need distractions. When in reality, what I think is, as I'm looking back, it's like I was probably a little insecure. I was insecure of, being a really young head coach and, fearing what parents might think or say. And that is just wrong. It's just wrong. Like, unless there is a parent who, like, there's obviously situations where, like, you've got to adjust, but for the most part, like, you want parents to be involved. Like, you want to be on the same team as the parents and not to be kept at arm's length. And obviously, you can have boundaries in place, which I absolutely recommend. We have some that I'll talk about in a second. But when athletes don't understand their role, when parents feel like they can't talk to you because you just said that we have a closed practice policy and you can't talk to me about playing time, and it just creates more confusion and more drama. And players don't know their roles, they don't know what's expected of them. Parents are trying to fill in the gaps, they're making stories. Like, it just turns into this big thing, right? And so what we can do instead, one thing that I started implementing early was defining player roles and having role clarity meetings at the beginning of the season. Okay. So having these meetings is essential. First of all, identify what roles you have in your team. Like, what roles are there and how much playing time is associated with each of those roles if you do coach a team sport. And then we sit down with athletes and we take them through a player impact plan. Okay. So this is like, here is how we see your impact on the program right now. Here's what your role is. Here's about how much playing time. We have them fill out a little form ahead of time to identify what their goals are for the season. And we match those with how we see them performing and impacting the program this season. And this player impact plan, we like put it all on a Google sheet and then we email it to parents. And so parents are aware. We talk about it at the parent meeting so that parents are in the loop on, like, this is exactly what your athlete's role is this season. Okay. And they can see it all clearly spelled out. So that's one way to help with this role clarity and this communication. I also started implementing standing meetings with my players throughout the season. So these are quick, like 5-minute check ins, but they happen every other week. So athletes have a schedule and I'm checking in with them on a regular basis, always like, making sure that they understand their role, understand what's expected of them, an opportunity to bring up any concerns. And this has greatly reduced the amount of confusion, the amount of drama, the amount of all the things that could happen as a result of lack of communication. Same thing with parents. I know that this is like super scary. I probably would have been scared to do this within the first several years of my coaching career, but I tell them, we have an open door policy. Now, I do have a 24-hour rule. We're not talking about playing time within 24 hours of the competition. I mean, that just protects everybody. But I tell parents, like, it is better for you to reach out to me for clarification than for you to, like, be in the dark, be frustrated, have all these concerns brewing. I would rather know. I'd rather us be on the same page with this. Now, this doesn't always mean that parents always get their way or, all of that. I think that sometimes we go into this fear mode of like, oh, then I'm going to be talking to parents all the time and they're going to feel like they can just, try and manipulate me. And that hasn't been my experience. My experience, parents have been super respectful as long as you are clear with what your boundaries are. So I say, if you're going to reach out to me, make sure that it is via email. Like, I don't give my personal number or anything. And we're not chatting after practice, just randomly, reach out to me. Like, make sure that you lay out and be specific about what your concerns are. And before you send an email, have you chatted with your athlete about this? Have you considered all perspectives? Okay. We're working towards a solution here. So if we need to have a meeting, does the athlete need to be involved? So there's a lot of nuance to that, but it has greatly reduced actually the number of parent emails or complaints that I've gotten. I mean, I wouldn't say that I do get, even in the beginning, like, it wasn't an enormous amount, but I was always like kind of blindsided by it because I was like, I thought everything was clear, but clearly it was not. So communicating that with your parents and thinking of your parents as kind of like on the same team as you, and then clearly communicating with your athletes is key, right? Brene Brown says clear is kind. And that's the kindest thing you can do for an athlete, is be clear about what their role is. On that, like, I used to kind of have this in my mind, like starters versus non-starters. Like, that was just kind of clear to me, starters versus non-starters. I would encourage you and challenge you, just like I challenge myself, to create roles that are empowering for your athletes. Not just like you're a non-starter. Your job is to encourage your team. While yes, that could be part of somebody's job, that's not a real role. I'll just say it. Like that's not something that an athlete is like, okay, yeah, I'm here to just be a cheerleader. Like if I were that, then I would be on the cheer team. Okay. So can you create roles where your athletes can be involved? And honestly, I'm still working on this too. I'm still working on this. Like, can you create a role where it's even if they're a serving sub or a blocking sub? I know those are volleyball terms, but like, can they actually have a role that is making some sort of difference, some sort of impact, rather than just like you're a cheerleader on your team? Okay. And then obviously praising and recognizing people throughout your program based on your core values, not just on stats and accolades, making sure that in practice you're mixing up starters versus non-starters. We do a competitive culture, and that really helps with this. So I actually go way more in depth on this around like role clarity and player impact plans and all of that in a video called Role Clarity Blueprint: How to Reduce Playing Time Drama. So go to that video if you want more of the specifics around how to create roles for your team, what an impact plan is, how to communicate an impact plan with your athlete and with your parents. You're going to learn a lot around that in that next video. So, what we talked about today, hopefully, is helpful. If you're a new coach, or even if you're a seasoned coach, around avoiding these three things. So, number one, coaching to prove or over coaching. Number two, not prioritizing the mental side of the game. Number three, this poor communication with athletes and parents. And to continue that conversation around how to make sure that you are providing clear communication and role clarity to your athletes, and also how to create a player impact plan, head on over to that next video, and I'll see you there.